Hey, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. I'm Tim Scott. This is my wife, Kimberly.
Hey.
And we're hey.
Hey.
And we're being
How
kind
you doing?
It's winter time. It's cozy
I
time,
know,
right?
you look so cute in your
I know
leather jacket today,
you
babe.
like winter cozy clothes.
So here's the thing. I love cozy clothes.
Yes.
It's been in the 90s in San Diego through some of this fall, which
Yes.
makes me not happy.
So you're glad it's over.
And I'm glad that we actually today even have some rain. But I really like dressing up in the cozy clothes. Here's the thing, though.
Yes.
I don't like driving in the rain. I like staying
really?
indoors when it's
I love
raining.
driving in the
Because
rain.
people are
I
crazy.
love driving in the rain with you in the car because you go crazy.
I am the worst passenger ever.
Yeah, well, let me just say, hey, next week, just so our listeners know, we're going to do some Christmas podcasts.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be fun. You love Christmas.
I do love
Right?
Christmas. I
And
start
I-
celebrating like
You-
on the first week of November.
You get a little early on it,
do.
but, I like Christmas. But here's the neat thing about Christmas. We'll save that for the Christmas podcast. So,
Aw.
no, I got something to say about that. And believe me, I won't forget. So those of you who are married, you have different views on Christmas. But anyway, all right, parenting. We're going to finish up today our little mini series on parenting. We're coming out of Psalm 127, which is this great passage that talks about how God gives us sleep in the midst of the fact that we have children. And he says that children are a heritage from the Lord.
Yeah.
And our first point that we made was, first thing we talked about, what are your priorities in parenting? So, what do you want to produce? What do you want your children to become? Second thing we talked about is how do you develop your children's values? And I think that was a really good podcast. I think it's very
if we
important.
do say so
It-
ourselves.
well, why not? Why not say it? Who else is going to say it? And then last week we talked about how do you deal with negative or positive behaviors. So how do you deal with behaviors of children? We talked about different stages of development and how you've got to change. It's so important to change the way you deal with your children as they grow older. We could have broke that down a lot more, but we just kind of gave an overview of that. And today, this podcast, we want to deal with the last two things, number 4 and number 5. Number 4 is, are your children a burden or a blessing? And actually,
I think
we
they
were
can
at
be both.
They can be both, yeah. From time to time, they change.
Depending.
And then the last thing we want to talk about is the what role should you play in your children's future? So let's talk about that first one. What would you say when you look at your children? I already know the answer to this. What would you say? Are children to you a burden or a blessing?
Okay. Without a doubt, and now, all of ours are raised, I'm going to say for sure a blessing.
Yeah.
But I think even when it was rough in those years, I'm kind of wired to be a mom
Yeah.
and a nurturer. So like that gives me so much joy, and I see them as a blessing.
Well, your greatest thing in life is
being a
family
mom.
and being
Yeah.
a mom. That's your
Yeah.
greatest thing.
That's my
And
favorite
for
thing.
some women,
It's my
that's not
favorite
their
thing.
greatest thing.
Yeah.
Some men, that's not their greatest thing. But somebody asked me one day, Tim, why would you marry a woman with 5 children,
Yeah.
5 young children? And I kind of thought, what better thing could I do with my life
So true.
than to help raise children and, and be involved in their lives?
Make that investment.
So here's the thing. Going into that, you need to understand that whatever riches you've amassed at that point are
Chuck
going to
'em
go
to the
away.
wind.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's okay. So, your net worth is going to drop from
Are
a
you
material.
scaring away potential
No,
dads
what I'm
here?
saying is count the cost. So your net worth financially is going to drop, but your social, your spiritual,
The
your
gains.
emotional worth is greatly enhanced. My life is better today having raised not only my first 2, but having raised our 5.
Yeah.
And it's been a greatest blessing. And now here we are with all but one are adults, and we have that blessing. So this question is very important. Are children a burden or a blessing? And you said that from time to time they're different. So
Well, you
sometimes they feel
feel
like a
the
burden.
burden of
Yeah.
being a parent and the burden of your children for sure. depending on different,
Yeah.
seasons you go through. They are a burden. Here's what I'd like to say to that though. It's like the Bible talks about how, you're yoked, like, when you, with God's calling on your life or whatever, your
married.
burden is heavy, but your yoke is light in
the
Jesus.
Lord's,
Parenting is a yoke, like the
Yeah.
two oxen, where you're carrying the weight of carrying these children through life.
Yes.
And it is a burden. Always, but with God's help, it's a burden that fits. It fits you because you were chosen to be that child's parent, that mom or dad. And so you do feel the weight of that, of stewarding these children through life, but the blessing is there every single day.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, when this question was asked of us, are children a burden or a blessing, or that comment was made, that's what forced me to go to Psalm 127. And then you and I started talking about that, because it says this: like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed, happy is the man who fills his quiver with them. So when you see the way that you see your children, if you see your children as a burden, you're going to be probably you're going to have a problem being a parent, and you're probably not going to do a great job.
Probably need to keep your quiver a little on the smaller
Yeah.
side.
Somebody
That's true. I never thought of it that way before.
I
Your
don't-
perspective is what creates whether or not they can be a burden or a blessing.
That's right.
It's about and what comes through with your perspective to the child, without a doubt, is your words that you speak from
Yes.
that foundation of burden or blessing. And that's why it's so important to speak blessing to your children. I think that's been something that was a big takeaway I got from my folks, and the power of our words, and how they literally can make or break your children right while you're raising them.
So I had a couple that had come to me years ago. This is probably 15, 20 years ago. Had come to me for counseling on the issue of parenting. They were really struggling as parents. And the more they talked and the more I listened, and I listened to them for probably about 35, 40 minutes, the children weren't there, but the children are somewhat rebellious and so forth. I asked them a question. I said, do you like being parents? Mm-hmm. And both of them looked at each other and said, you know what? No, we don't. I said, well, that's showing in the way you talk about your kids. But I'll bet you it shows in the way you talk to your kids. So how you feel about your kids, if you see them as a burden, it's going to affect the way you speak. As you said, it's going to affect the words you use. You're gonna see them as not only a burden, but annoying.
Sure.
They're going to be annoying to you.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. You don't need any help to be annoyed by kids. Kids are annoying.
They can be,
And,
yes.
Yeah, they can't. They are
at
yes.
times, yeah.
And sometimes they're a great blessing. Sometimes they're annoying. Think about this. You're a grown human being. You have a child in your house that is demanding and immature.
Yes.
And that's just your spouse we're talking about. No, that's your children. And your children they're immature. So they're going to be demanding. They're going to be, they're going to whine. Yeah. They're going to complain.
Entitlement.
They're like little stalkers. They follow you around the house. My mother used to say, the only place I could go to was the bathroom to be alone.
True.
And my mother said we would stand at the door and knock and go, Mom. And she goes, you need to leave right now.
Yes.
And we're like, that was her safe place, She's not using the bathroom. She's just sitting in there reading a book.
The other day, Gracie came down and she's like, I'm so irritated because Biscuit, her dog, she's like, she follows me everywhere. I can't even go to the bathroom without her following me. I said, okay, this is great training for you of what parenting will be like. She says, Mom, I already told you I'm not going to have any kids someday. I'm like, yeah right.
Well, here's, it's her own fault because she walks in, where's my little lover? Hey, little Biscuit. And, and so she gets what she deserves.
Yeah,
there.
but she's getting a taste of parenting with
but
that.
Parenting is a blessing, but they're only a blessing when you look at the context of this passage. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver. He shall not be put to shame. And that's in the context of verse 1 that says, the Lord builds the house, The watchman stays awake in vain unless the Lord is watching. It is in vain to rise up early without the Lord's help. It's in vain to try to get free from anxiety unless the Lord is involved. Children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. So they are a blessing.
Yes.
And you need to see God gave you those children to be a blessing to you. And I'll tell you, I have enjoyed being the parent of 7 kids, about 80% of the time.
Yeah.
There's that 20% you're like, what am I doing?
This is hard.
This is hard, and can I get away? Yes. And we didn't get away a lot, but every once in a while we did, and it was kind of nice.
You know
when we
what's
get away.
cool about it, though? I know, like, we sort of beat all the statistics of what's the appropriate size family. And I've told my children, now that they are in the baby-making years and some of them are married off and stuff, I fully appreciate that they want to have 2 and maybe 3 at the most. I think if I were them, I would feel the same way. Because of the way everybody has to work now to afford a home and the investment that you want to make with your kids, and you don't feel like you can. I'm a proponent of that, but I'm also a proponent of those who say, I want a big family. I will just say for us, the blessing of having 7, which, it being blended, has been incredible.
Yeah.
And it's a tribe that's created within, and you design the culture of that tribe.
Yeah.
And it's, even with every family's weaknesses and strengths, it's pretty cool to have a band of brothers and sisters, and they all love each other and hang out together. And it's been an investment, and it's been a burden.
Yeah, here's the thing. If you have 5 kids, so we have 7 altogether, but if you have 3 kids, 5 kids, ask yourself this question when they're toddlers or young teens or whatever. What child can you imagine
Living
doing
without.
life
Yep.
without?
Exactly.
Not
a
one of them.
single one.
And nobody comes to mind. So when you're planning, you go, I only want 2, and then you get 3. Listen, that third one's going to be a blessing.
Oh,
Every
yes.
child is a blessing. Even when they mess up, they're a blessing. And there's hope that one day they'll turn around.
Yeah.
And that happened to our oldest child. There was this kind of neat turnaround after a season of rebellion. And we're just so thankful for her. And now as she ministers to other people, I'm talking about Carrie.
Yeah, she's the
as she
greatest catalyst of the gospel of those kids.
Yeah,
right
she's
now.
just out preaching all over the country, and doing a great work for the Lord. But there was a time of heartache, and then to see that turn around. So we need to be able to fit this in. So let's move to the next one. What role should you play in your children's future? So let me go back to the passage we're dealing with, and that's Psalm 127. And this is what it says in verses 4 and 5. They are arrows in the hand of a warrior. And so when he says, blessed is man whose quiver is full, a quiver, if you don't know, is what arrows go into for an archer or...
It's like the container they keep on their back.
It holds, And so, when you have these arrows, a strong warrior, and notice he says a warrior, you are able to knock that arrow on that bow. Those of you not watching, I'm actually pretending I'm knocking an arrow on a bow, and you pull it back with all of your might. And when you're strong and properly conditioned and prepared, you don't wobble.
Right.
You're steady, and then you're able to point that arrow in the direction that it should go. And think about this. It goes far beyond where you can go.
Right.
So that arrow shot properly goes in a direction that you point it. So when a child is raised properly, they go in the direction they should go.
Yes.
Let me read you a scripture, and I'll come back to this. It says this in Psalm... let's see. Let me get it here. Okay, I'll find it. I'm looking. Here it is. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, I've heard that taught where if you train up a child, even if they rebel, they will come back. Yeah. And there's probably some truth to that. But really, the way this is translated from the original language, train up a child in his way, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. which leads me to believe, and this is very important for parents to understand, we have 7 children. Not one of them is like the other.
No.
They all have different personalities. They all have different temperaments. They're all different on the Enneagram. They're
Yeah.
all different on the shape studies. They're different on temperament studies. All of these different. What's the one we use all the time? Disc analysis.
DISC.
All of them have different personalities and so forth. Your job is to train each one of those children unique to their personality, their temperament, their gifts, their talents. So you need to find out what those are and then point them in that direction. Don't
good.
try to shape them in the way you want them to go. Shape them in the way that they should go, in the way that they are going, is what Proverbs 22:6 says. So here's what back to the arrow. So you find out the direction they should go, and you as a warrior point that arrow in that direction, and they will follow through with that, and they'll be a great blessing to you. If you try to turn a child who's non-athletic into a professional athlete, you're going to have a problem.
So good.
If you try to, there are many children that should not go to college. I can't even emphasize this. They should stay away from college. They should go to a trade school or maybe a 1-year program. Maybe they want to be somewhere in computer tech, or they want to be in nursing school, or they want to go to auto mechanics, learn be a plumber or an
Design, all the
electrician
things,
or
yeah.
design. There's all of these trades that they could go to, and they go to college, they earn a degree, and 80% of all graduates don't use their degree. Now they have this huge bill that they have to pay, and these loans, and they aren't going in the direction. Find out the direction where your child excels, learn about them. If you don't learn about them, who else is going to? Point them in the right direction. And then what role do you play in your children's future? Find out where they're supposed to go. Find out what their talents are.
And come alongside them. I
Yes,
don't think
exactly.
it's even a thing where they should, you want to steer them in the right direction. You want to support them in their journey. And, depending on their age, sometimes they need to scoot them along. But
Yeah.
I don't think you should be the driver, because, again, the tendency is that our own ego gets in the way of our parenting, of what we want for our children. We need to make sure that if this is what they want, then we continue to come beside them,
Yes.
come alongside, support, sometimes give them a shove when they need it. But
So
don't drive their vision for them if it's really not their vision.
yeah, so we have my father was a pastor, and he wanted all of his sons to be pastors.
Yeah.
He was a Baptist, so he didn't want his daughters to be pastors. That's
Oh,
for
don't
sure.
even get me started.
Yeah. So anyway, but he wanted his sons to be pastors, and we weren't all geared towards that, And I became a pastor, and
But you started out pursuing medicine.
I did, but I quickly realized my heart was in the ministry. I really was called. We had one of our sons who, by the way, probably on the side will be preaching and so forth, not as his primary career, but on the side. But
a teacher,
he's a great Bible teacher. He's a great preacher. But he really felt that he wanted to be in law enforcement. We have another son, without getting into details, wanted to be in special forces. He pursued that. And, that was his dream.
Serve and protect.
We have a son that wants to
ministry.
be a firefighter.
Yeah.
We have daughters that want to do certain things. Our youngest daughter has this dream about a certain thing, and we're like encouraging her.
Yeah.
And, that changes every once in a while.
Well, and she's at
But,
the age
yeah.
where that's the whole point. You don't go sign up into a university
Exactly.
with what you sign yourself for the rest of your life and the bill if you're not sure what you want to do.
So this concept, what role do we play in our child's future? Here's the answer. Figure out which way they are going in the way that they should go, and then they will not depart from it. If you try to get them in your way, they will be frustrated. Some people have been frustrated for a lifetime.
Yes.
I know so many men who have tried to shape their sons into what they do. So many. My dad used to say these people were called by their parents, not by God, to be in the ministry.
Yeah.
And yet he
was
couldn't
doing
help.
the same
He
thing.
couldn't help it.
Yeah.
It was so strong.
Yeah.
And your dad, I think, felt that. He didn't
Oh,
pressure.
my dad used to
but-
say, my sons will be pastors and my daughter will marry a pastor. And I heard
that's what
that growing
happened.
up, but that's exactly
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's just
So,
true.
so what role do you play? Here's what you need to do. When they're very young, see what their talents, see what they like to do. There's this great way of finding out what somebody is fit for. It was done by Rick Warren, called SHAPE. Spiritual gifts, heart's desire, SHA is
Abilities.
ability, P is personality, and then how do you spell say?
E.
SHAPE, yeah, experience. So when you look at your shape, what is your shape for ministry is how he uses it in areas of volunteers and so forth. But when you do this for your children, at least take it that seriously, where you're really looking at what are their gifts, what are their abilities, what is their heart's desire, what's their personality like. Maybe they're not a leader, maybe that's not their personality. What experience are they developing? Help them grow in that area. The greatest gift you can give to your child is to help them find their future. And then if they fail, help them regroup and find a new direction.
Yeah.
And don't be
Just
too
learn
harsh
through
on
it.
them.
Yeah.
Learn. And some people, it is amazing. I already mentioned this, but it is amazing to me how many people go to college and don't use the degree.
Yeah.
And it's because they had to go to college
Yeah.
because that's what their parents
Yep.
expected.
The Joneses and their
Yeah.
parents. That's what
Yeah,
everybody's
that's right.
doing.
Keeping
Everybody's
up with the
doing it.
Joneses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let your child wants to be an auto mechanic. That's a great
We
thing.
need a good one.
Yes, and in fact, it's nice. We have a really strong auto mechanic with integrity, and we're very thankful for that.
Yeah,
auto
he's
mechanic.
awesome. But I'm saying there's a fit for everyone, and I
Yes,
think
there sure
one
is.
of the things I feel like I did right with the kids is that early on I did not feel like it was my place to call them to ministry, because ministry, like anything else, if you're not fit for it, is hard and difficult, and
Yes.
you better be called to be able to walk that out. So I leaned into, what do you love to do? What do you enjoy doing? What are you gifted to do? And then God clearly is the one who wired you for that. So then we were just talking about this, Sophie, my producer, and I, about this, that then he's not going to try to make you change tracks. He's actually hardwired you to lean into those things. And so that's, if you can see that as your opportunity to be an influence and to minister through that platform, then you are accomplishing God's calling on your life. That's the
Yes.
bottom line.
So I don't mind mentioning the other day I was in counseling, not me counseling, but receiving counseling. And I was talking about preaching. And my counselor said to me, she said, what does that do for you? And I said, it gives me purpose.
Yeah.
And she said, well, kind of break that down. What does that mean? And of course, that's her job to,
Yeah.
I love having somebody has to listen to you, and
Your paid friend.
Yeah, my paid friend. And it was really cool to be able to kind of unpack that and say what it means to me
Yes.
to be a teacher of the Word of God. It brings incredible fulfillment to me. And yet I talked to Ronnie and the incredible fulfillment
son,
he has
yes.
being in law enforcement,
Yeah.
and our son in the military, and our daughter Shara, who loves being
Yes.
in ministry, and Carrie, who
Yeah.
loves preaching, and all of these things. It just,
Yeah.
what role do you play?
Yep.
Help them find it.
Find their purpose.
And when they
Yeah.
fail, help them regroup and find another path.
Yeah, that's
and when
good.
they finally find that direction that fits them, even if it's when they're in their 30s or
Right.
40s or later, it's okay.
Yeah.
Let them try new things, and let's find out what God's direction is for our lives. Listen, we're going to talk next week, as I said, about Christmas. We got a couple of sessions. What are we talking about?
Yes, welcome
it
to
sounds
our
like a
sessions,
class.
our Christmas
Yeah.
sessions.
Our podcast on Christmas, and we're going to answer some important questions on Christmas, the do's and don'ts, and some of the traditions that work for us, and maybe some ideas for you as well. So, hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. We are Hope Rescue Podcast. We have a lot of things that we would love to share with you, but there are things that you may want us to answer questions about. If you have questions, send them to us, hoperescuepodcast.org, and you can send us questions. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great week. God bless. We'll see you next week on Hope Rescue Podcast.
Bye, guys.